Start video, just unmuted.
Good afternoon. It is 2:23, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Permit Committee meeting. We'll begin with the roll call of commission members. Commissioner Fair. Here. Commissioner Ponce.
Here.
Commissioner Hughes.
Present.
Commissioner Rubin.
Here.
And right here we have a quorum. And I'd like to request a motion to approve the minutes from the June 14th. June 14th, July 11th.
July 11th.
July 11th, 2024 meeting. Do we have a motion? So moved. Commissioner Fair, wait a second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Ponce, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Thank you, and the minutes will be posted on the website, and the motion carries unanimously. There are 6 projects on the agenda for today's meeting. Staff of the commission will present the project on the agenda and state their recommendation. Following the staff presentation, the committee will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff. The applicant may then make a statement. Following the applicant's statements, members of the public may make their statements. I'd like to ask anyone other than the applicant wishing to make a statement on the item on today's agenda to complete a public comment card and give the card to a member of the staff. Comment cards are available at the door. As a courtesy to other individuals wishing to offer comments, we ask the members of the general public limit your statements to 3 minutes or less. When the time comes for public comment on the item on the agenda, I will call the cards and ask you to make your statement. Please state your name, interest, organization, or company represented, if any. Now we'll go to our first project, which is 3558 South Artesian in the 12th Ward, the DuPont White House. Proposed construction of a garage, fence, and rear addition to existing 3-story masonry single-family home. And Tyler Taylor has the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. The DuPont White House is an individually designated 3-story brick residence located in the Brighton Park neighborhood at the intersection of South Artesian Avenue and West 36th Street. Built in 1876, it is one of the oldest buildings and last surviving vestiges of the once prominent explosives industry that existed in the area after the Civil War until the 1880s. The applicants are proposing alterations to the house to add a small deck and pergola on the roof, as well as a mudroom and small covered porch at the rear of the kitchen wing on the west side of the house. A new garage is proposed to be constructed in the southwest corner of the lot. Finally, a new fence is proposed around the perimeter of the property, composed of metal and masonry on the east and south, and wood on the north and west. All new elements proposed are highlighted in yellow in this diagram. The small rear frame addition is proposed to have a shed roof and is clad in cementitious siding with a 4-inch lap exposure. A new masonry opening in the rear wall of the kitchen is proposed to create the doorway connecting the mudroom to the kitchen, highlighted here in red. A wood stair and small exterior porch at the south of the addition will provide access from the mudroom to the backyard and garage. The addition is small and clearly secondary to both the existing kitchen wing and the house. The space beneath the addition is open, supported by columns, giving it an appearance similar to an enclosed porch. The addition is clearly distinguished from the rest of the house, and minimal demolition is required to accommodate it. Staff recommends the addition as proposed will not have an adverse effect on the building. On the roof of the kitchen wing, the height of the existing parapet is proposed to be increased by 18 inches using new brick and limestone and a limestone coping. The new brick is proposed to match the existing in size, color, texture, and mortar joints. A wood guardrail will surround the deck, extending 2 feet above the new parapet. About half the area of the deck is proposed to be covered by a wood trellis structure measuring 8 feet above the parapet. The existing masonry of the kitchen wing will be tuck pointed, helping to unify the new masonry for the parapet and the existing masonry. The door to access the roof deck from the interior is existing, so no new openings are required. The proposed rooftop trellis structure and new guards are much lower and narrower than the existing building and do not change its perceived shape or massing. The materials are simple and compatible with the rest of the building, and staff recommends the approval as proposed. Its overall south elevation shows the proposed rear structures in context of the rest of the house. A new garage is proposed to be constructed in the southwest corner of the site using the existing foundation of the garage that previously stood in the same location. It will therefore have the same plan dimensions as the previous garage and be able to utilize the existing curb cut on 36th Street, so no new curb is required. The garage itself is proposed to be simple in design, using frame construction with a hipped roof and clad in cementitious lap siding, also with a 4-inch exposure. The garage is clearly distinguished from the historic main building in design and material. It's just large enough to accommodate parking for 2 vehicles and does not obscure or distract from the main house. Staff recommend approval of the garage design as proposed. On the site plan, a new fence is proposed around the perimeter of the lot. On the east and south sides, shown in green, the fence is a low masonry curb with 5-foot tall masonry piers, spaced 10 feet apart with open metal vertical pickets between the piers. Midway along the south property line, the fence transitions to a completely solid 4.5-foot tall masonry wall with a limestone base and cap. The brick is proposed to match that of the house in color, size, and wood note pattern. The materials and fence design are consistent and compatible with the house. At the west and north side property lines, in orange, an opaque wood fence is proposed. A dimension detail of this fence was not provided, but it appears to be 6 feet in height. This is appropriate along the rear and north side yards of the property. However, on the north side of the front yard, shown in blue, this section of the fence should be no higher than 5 feet. It should be an open metal fence. This wooden metal fence should be noted on the site plan and a typical detail for it included on the permit drawings. 12th Ward Alderman Julia Ramirez has reviewed the proposal and has no objection. The architect, Thomas Montgomery, is here and able to answer your questions.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Commissioners, any questions for Tyler before we hear from the architect? Seeing none,
See the conditions.
can we hear from the property owner or the architect?
Yeah, I'm Thomas Montgomery. I'm the architect for the project. I don't have anything else to add, but I'm happy to answer your questions if anything. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, and we'll move to the public comment portion of this. And we have one person that's signed up to speak, and it's Mr. Ward Miller.
Yes, Commissioners, for the record, Ward Miller, Richard H. Treehouse, Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. We're not opposed to the project, and we think that this really shows the flexibility of landmark designations, that you can make these alterations and even a fence, which seems very appropriate, and of course a garage, which is a utilitarian structure. You know, over time, I've passed this house. I think it's a really gorgeous house. But you know, if you go back to slide 1, you see some elements of the facade that either appear to be missing or need a little bit more attention and TLC, if you will. And always worried about sort of the look and the condition of the primary facades. And as you can see here on the left, you know, was it parged? Was it painted? But you know, if we're investing monies in these properties, it would be wonderful to see this property and that facade truly restored. It does have a certain patina to it as you see it. You really recognize this is a very old historic house, and it's really a beautiful house. But I know this is not on the docket today, but would encourage the ownership to look at more of a restoration plan for the facade and maybe a sort of a stabilization of whatever that cementous or paint-like material is on the facade. It's really a gorgeous landmark. It's a true landmark in this section of the city, but would just like to express our concern about the appearance of the building. And if there's any way to remedy that in the future, we would welcome that. I realize that's not before you today, but just wanted to mention that publicly and with the architect and perhaps the owner here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. I don't think there's anyone else that has signed up to speak, so that would conclude our public comment portion of this. Commissioners, do you have any discussion or questions like to propose?
Maybe just a comment. You know, like you typically have like a photo of the existing building. I think that would have been a little helpful just to appreciate a little bit of the context. But other than that,
Could I'd like to respond a little bit. So the Parge Code is not historic. A project to our understanding is a project to remove it was actually undertaken in the past. There is concern that doing so further will damage the historic brick beneath it. So that's why it looks like it's in this state. It's actually currently being well taken care of, but this doesn't appear so. And yes, hopefully we will see a full restoration in the future, but it is, in good plans right now.
Thank you.
No question. That part of that rest, like if it's just cleanup of masonry, does that have to come before you? Or from before?
Well, yeah, we'll definitely review that work. Any work to the exterior of a landmark requires permit and review. Depending on scope and scale, it might be something we would need to bring to the committee. But that's outside of what we're looking at today. But yes, absolutely, we may see it in the future.
Okay, great.
The last point of clarification, it's standard that the architect will submit samples of particularly, I guess, the fence.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
Any other points, commissioners? Seeing none, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the staff recommendation. Do we have a motion? So moved, Commissioner Spare, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Rubin, I believe, and do the roll call, Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Yes, and Commissioner Ponce.
Yes.
And is a yes, and I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, good luck. And we'll move on to project number 2, which is 1357 North Elston, the 27th Ward, the Morningsall Company Warehouse Complex. And we're talking about the proposed interior and exterior alterations. Include the insertion of 4 new 8 by 10 feet punched window openings along Black Hawk of the packaging buildings. And Emily Barton has a presentation.
Okay, so the Morton Salt Company Warehouse Complex was built in 1930 and designed by Graham Anderson, Probst & White. The complex occupies a roughly triangular site bounded by the north branch of the Chicago River, Elston Avenue, and Black Hawk Street. This is an approved Class L project with the initial application reviewed by CCL on July 1st of 2021. The current rehab scope, the overall rehab scope has been reviewed at multiple PRC meetings, and the current proposal is for the insertion of punched openings along the Black Hawk elevation. So the Morton Salt Complex was primarily built in 1930, but was modified throughout its history. To the north of the West Shed building are the original packaging buildings that are interconnected with and attached to the shed. Along the Black Hawk Street elevation, initial plans of the packaging buildings included a soda mill between the boiler house and record storage. Ultimately, the soda mill was cut from the plans, but a space was left for it in the final building. And this became the location of a new brick storage addition that was added in 1968. And that's what you see circled there. While all the complex buildings are simplistic and utilitarian in their design, this 1968 addition is particularly plain. The only visible elevation faces Black Hawk Street and is a blank masonry wall with a single metal door in the center. There's no masonry ornamentation, and portions of the masonry appear to have been replaced in the past. As a part of the complex's new use, the applicant is proposing a new retail and office space in this storage area. To accommodate this use, 4 new 10-foot tall by 8-foot wide windows are proposed in the approximately 24-foot tall north elevation. An existing door opening in the center is proposed to be enlarged to accommodate a new 8'2" tall double door. The new windows are proposed to be steel with 16 simulated divided lights. Historically, as an industrial complex, window openings had nothing to do with aesthetics, but rather how the building functioned for industrial processes. Because windows weren't required for salt storage, no windows were added, but punched openings are prevalent on other elevations throughout the complex. The new openings and windows are compatible with the remainder of the complex, including previously approved new punched openings at other locations throughout the shed and packaging buildings. While the proposed new windows are taller than the other masonry openings along Blackhawk, they're proportional to the 24-foot tall single-story space, and staff recommends they will not have an adverse effect on the building or complex. So we are recommending approval of this project with just the two conditions shown. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions for me, I believe someone from ownership is here as well.
Thank you, Emily. Commissioners, any questions for Emily before we hear from the applicant? I have a question. So do you know about the uses behind there in terms of, I'm looking at the door. Is there any, the door seems smaller than some of the other doors in the other facades? And I'm just wondering, is there a, reason for that, or do we know? Should.
That might be a better question for.
Okay.
I'm Shane Epson, architect with
Hi.
Gensler, and the client, Greenwood is here as well.
Great.
No, quite honestly, if the door could be made taller, just trying to keep it relatively similar to the opening that's currently there.
Mhm.
Just from a practicality standpoint, we did increase it and make it a double leaf door as
Make it
opposed to a
wider.
single, so it's wider. But when you walk into the building, the slab inside is about 40 inches above grade. The windows work out well from the proportion from the exterior, and then they also work out well from the interior when you're actually in the space looking out. But yeah, we could adjust the door.
Commissioner, any questions? Yes.
One other question, I don't know if the lighting that's shown, I think on the existing parts to kind of the right and left, is actually there, but assuming, it's a consistent sidewalk there, is there any plans for putting lighting on this facade?
No. This is really the main entrance for concert goers. So people really will park on the street or the adjacent parking lot, and then it's really the concert goers that are walking down Blackhawk to get to the courtyard in the back to enter the concert venue.
Assuming there's already adequate lighting.
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, Commissioner Fair. And then staff will be using this entrance, or it's not,
No.
it's discrete entrance?
Yeah, it's meant to be discreet. It's
Yeah.
not meant to be
Okay.
used on the regular. So everyone will be entering along Elston, which is the main entry for the building anyways, in the accessible route.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? Then if seeing none, let's go to the public comment portion. We have one public person who decided to speak, Mr. Ward Miller.
Oh, thank you. We have no objection to this, and, this really does show how landmarks can be flexible. You've got a 1968 building here, which is different from the 1930 Graham Anderson Probst and White structure. The idea of windows being needed, that's a reality that makes this building function. It's wonderful to see landmarks and the permit review committee is working together with ownership to make this a really viable project, which it really is, and a really terrific project. Who would believe that the Morton Salt Company building would be a successful music venue even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago? We'd be celebrating this, landmarking it, and also taking advantage of the riverfront site. So in so many ways, we're grateful for the team, the ownership, and for your blessings on these kinds of projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I believe that is the last person signed up to speak, and I'd like to close the public comment portion of this and move to final discussion points, commissioners. Seeing none. Yes,
Do you
Commissioner.
think the door should be taller?
Say that again.
Is that hard to do?
The door being taller?
Just to match the other heights?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly doable. We were trying to align with the datum of the window
The
openings.
windows, yeah.
I don't think we don't want to reduce the window opening, so.
No.
The windows are more important for us because it's gonna be office space, so
Right,
like
right.
natural light versus the door that's great because it's one that we don't want people to like actually use. But making it large, as long as it doesn't affect the windows. That's not too much.
So one comment that the dimensions of the
the doors may not be 100% to scale since the other buildings that we're not occupying are set back a good ways, and I'm not 100% sure if that's just a visual, you know, concern based off of this rendering, which we, if you look at the upper one, which is likely more to scale, has a little bit different look.
Yeah, it looks like it's slightly off, like those other two doors, even on the drawing above, just look slightly larger than the double door
Yeah,
in height.
the other buildings, we don't have full drawings for. Yeah, our project is only the center portion, and we tried to.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
saying those existing doors drawn might not be to scale?
Right, yeah.
Okay, okay, I get what you're saying now.
On the bottom rendering, we created the rendering based
Yeah.
off of the landlord drawings above.
Okay.
Correct, or Gensler's team did. Yeah.
Well, I guess my comment would be, for Emily's sake, similar to how you guys have matched the datum of the window seals to also match the heights of the existing doors. Whatever it is.
Okay, any other
No.
points? So we have, like to, request a motion to adopt a revised, staff recommendation to include looking at the door height. Making sure that there's some alignment with the doors that are adjacent on the elevation, correct?
Yes.
So there's a motion on the table. Commissioner Hughes
Yes.
making the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Ponce? Commissioner
just-
Ferris, you concerned about
Maybe just
something?
have a question. Is it the one door? Yeah, sorry, I think that's to the south, yeah, but to the left, is that the datum that we're comparing things back
Yeah,
to?
both doors, on both sides.
I mean, I could be convinced either way. I wonder, I guess you got an immediate relationship to the punch windows that will be kind of thrown off, and punch windows relate to the datum. Seems like windows next door to the left, so, yeah, I would offer that. I didn't know how strongly we felt about that. I mean, I guess also just thinking of doors, it looks like maybe the one on the left is kind of like a clear story in the line drawing, so that might be a way of addressing it, but, yeah, just wanted to tease that out, if that was, you know, window down versus door down, I guess, starting to still feeling the same.
I do, yes. Just because the other two doors, and now my argument completely goes out of the window if those two doors are different heights. But in the existing drawings here, it appeared that they are the same heights. And so I think just to make everything crisp and clean, that double door in the middle should be the same height as those.
Is the difference that there's a transom on the, I know there's definitely one on the left. I don't know if there's one on the right or not. Google Maps is showing 2009 images. But that could also be what makes the door appear a lot taller on the extremities, but not in the middle, where actually the door height is the same across the board.
Okay, so add a transom
Yeah, I think, yeah.
or taller doors.
Transom or
I'm just
taller
saying the
doors.
opening, like
Right.
the cutouts should be the
In
same
review,
height, whether
it's
it's a
just adding
transom
a
door.
transom. I think we just want you to also, you know,
Yeah, I
investigate
think we
that.
can, I don't think we have an objection to that, whether it's a.
Yeah, it's not an
transom or
adjust, it's just a
taller.
matter of, we don't even know if the other two doors are the same
Yep,
size.
so-
Yeah,
That's the thing.
exactly. Exactly.
So the motion, I think, is the revised motion is an additional review of the adjacent doors and,
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
so then that motion's on the table, Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ponce has seconded it. Commissioner Fair is a yes. Commissioner Rubin?
Yes.
Is a yes, and I'm a yes. So,
Thank
thank you. Motion carries unanimously and, thank you for this. Yeah, it's wonderful. Moving on to, project number 3, 1734 North Wells, the 43rd Ward. continued review, proposed modifications to existing rooftop decks constructed without a permit in the 1980s, including replacement of railings. And Emily Barton has a presentation for us.
Yes, I do.
Uh-oh. Six.
Okay, great. So, as a little refresher, the subject property is located mid-block on Wells Street in the Old Town Triangle District, based around a building originally built in the 1880s. The building at 1734 North Wells is best known for its 1920s and 30s remodeling and additions by Saul Kogan and Edgar Miller. Significant alterations were made to the 1880s buildings, including construction of a new floor on top of the original building, significantly modified door and window openings, the addition of 2 attached structures, one on the front and the other to the rear and side, and the addition of handcrafted ornament and decorative masonry. While preliminarily deemed a non-contributing structure in the current Old Town Triangle District designation, the building separately meets criteria for individual landmark designation. The building is currently a condominium with 7 units. In April 2024, the Permit Review Committee reviewed the proposed modifications to existing rooftop decks constructed without a permit in the 1980s, including replacement of railings. At that time, the committee preliminarily found that the decks as built and with the proposed modifications were an adverse effect and should be eliminated. The committee further advised that should the owner wish to revise their plans to further minimize visibility, they may work with staff to develop drawings and schedule a physical mock-up for evaluation. Any visible deck or railings would require re-review by PRC, and that's what we have here today. All right, so just as a refresher, the revised proposal once again includes 2 decks, one on the eastern roof and one on the northern roof. The eastern roof deck was originally 22 feet by 20 feet 3 inches in area. In April 2024, the applicant proposed to reduce that footprint to 20 feet by 17 foot 3 inches. The applicant has now further reduced the proposed footprint to 19 feet 8 inches by 11 feet. There's now a proposed setback of approximately 7 feet from the outer face of the northern parapet, 3 feet 2 inches from the outer face of the eastern parapet, and 2 feet 9 inches from the outer face of the southern parapet, with an additional 1 foot 7 inches at the eastern portion to further minimize visibility. The railings have also been redesigned to be as minimal as possible, with a simple open metal design with horizontal rails parallel to the parapet. The north deck was originally 16 feet 10 inches by 16 feet 4 inches in area, and at 2 separate heights to accommodate the roof slope. In the April 2024 PRC submission, the applicant proposed to reduce this footprint to 10 feet 10 inches by 14 feet 10 inches. And the applicant has now further reduced the proposed footprint to 9 feet 9 inches by 14 feet 8 inches. This is a proposed setback of approximately 8 feet from the interface of the north parapet and 2 foot 2 inches from the interface of the east parapet. The reduction in the area size eliminates the need for the deck to have 2 separate heights, and now is proposed to all be at the lower level. Like the eastern deck, the railings have been redesigned to be minimal horizontal rails parallel to the parapet. So a physical mock-up was conducted on June 10th. And I'll go through a couple vantage points here. So from vantage point 1, neither deck is visible from this location. From vantage point 2, again, neither deck is visible from this location. When you walk across the street to the other sidewalk, the eastern deck starts to become visible. Please note that for convenience and ease of understanding, the visible elements have been highlighted in yellow, but they will be open metal rail. From further down the street on the other side of the sidewalk, the eastern deck is visible from this location, but partially obscured by the immediately adjacent building to the south. Similarly, from vantage point 5, the eastern deck is minimally visible from this location on the sidewalk across the street looking north. When you go up north of the building, looking south, both the eastern and north decks are very minimally visible from this location on the sidewalk across the street looking south. The north deck is minimally visible from this location further up the street, looking south, but does not raise higher than the existing eastern parapet. Based on the physical mock-up, the eastern deck is still visible from vantage points 3 and 4 specifically. Staff recommend modifying the footprint of the deck to further minimize this visibility. The southeast corner is the most visible, and staff recommends removing approximately 15 square feet of area by increasing the south setback by approximately 3 feet and the east setback by approximately 5. While this will complicate the railing line, it should also significantly reduce or eliminate visibility from the south. While the new proposed railings will still be minimally visible on secondary elevations from select vantage points to the south and north, the decks will not be visible straight on. Staff believe that with the additional setbacks recommended by staff, the minimal visibility of the proposed new railings will be comparable to visibility of rooftop additions and railings previously approved by the committee in the district, including at 1805 North Sedgwick and 1834 North Lincoln. Additionally, although the subject property is a flat roof building, the Old Town Triangle District also has an adopted dormer policy allowing for visible changes to the roof line of pitch roof buildings. Staff can confirm that the proposed decks will not compromise the building's ability to be individually designated. Staff further recommends that the committee consider the limited visibility of the proposed railings with the additional recommended setbacks, the proposed redesign of the railings, and the precedent set by other approvals as you make the decision regarding this proposal. A new letter of support from Old Town Triangle Association was received and was included in your packet. Alderman Knudsen is also supportive of the revised submittal, but we didn't receive any written comments to that effect. And 2 additional letters from a neighboring owner in the building have also been included in your packet for your review. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions of me, we have the owner and the architect here as well, if you have questions for them.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily before we hear from the applicant? Seeing none, let's hear from the property owner. You could introduce yourself.
You don't mind, I'll just stand here. I grew up in Cincinnati and I used to take the old train Riley from Cincinnati to.
What's your name?
You could just
Oh,
introduce
sorry.
yourself.
It's Dr. Glenn Aldinger. And there's 9 units, not 7. And of those 9 units, I own 6. And the reason that I own 6 is because I purchased them over the years when I saw some changes that were being made into some of these apartments that were not changes that I assumed that Edgar wouldn't have approved of. Now, we were fortunate to find Edgar very much live in San Francisco. And a group of us went out there, just to meet him, found out he was not in a good way at all. He had a family member and non-family members that were pretty much taking advantage of him after some medical problems that he had. And we suggested possibly bringing him back to Chicago, which he embraced and they embraced. And for 10 years, we had Edgar with us. We put him in one of the apartments. We built him a shop. He was doing stained glass, painting, writing his book. I mean, this was a true Renaissance artist. And there's truly not an artistic media that he wasn't facile in. And for 10 years, he was producing more art, and it was great. The one of us that had the most time was my wife at the time, who's now deceased, but she wasn't working, and she and Edgar spent a lot of time together. And when Edgar died, he willed 525 pieces of art, which is all he had at the time, to her, with the understanding that she would donate those pieces to various museums that would show them. What he didn't want is for them to be boxed up somewhere and hidden from view. And so we're going through the process now of her estate. I'm the beneficiary. the sole beneficiary and the executor. And I think now we have an appraiser who will appropriately appraise these items, and then we can start donating them, which is the intent. The building has a history. Not only did I come up from Cincinnati and fall in love with the building and the other Edgar Miller Salkogan complex on Burton, but after I was able to move into this complex, at the time owned by Lucy Montgomery, a very interesting person, largest contributor to Harold Washington's campaign, would have parties with artists, designers, activists, and she was a character. When she died, and again, I think I said this last month when we were there, she was eulogized by Bobby Rush, who said he would have been killed in the shootout had she not sent him to law school. And she supported a couple of the Panthers with her education. She was great, and we miss her terribly. The building is phenomenal. It deserves ultimate landmarking, individual landmarking status, and again, as the majority owner, I'm supportive of that. I want to get this deck business done. Those decks were put up by owners long before me, and we'll be following the commission's recommendation to pull those decks and the fencing virtually out of view, and look forward to making that change. And happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Ollinger. Questions, commissioners? Any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Seeing none, I'd like to move to the public comment portion of this item, and we'll begin with Mr. Ward Miller.
Thank you. So for the record, commissioners, Ward Miller, the Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. I want to start off by thanking Dr. Oldinger for his statement that he just made. Thank you very much. We are also in support of a landmark designation of the building. And also Zach Bleicher, who is one of the owners here and runs the Edgar Miller Society, and Diane Gonzalez, one of our board members with the Old Town Triangle District, longtime member and of not only Preservation Chicago, but also the Old Town Triangle District. And almost, I believe she was there when it was designated in the 1970s. Preservation Chicago has no issues with the rooftop decks and the proposed alterations to the existing rooftop deck, which was constructed decades ago without a permit. However, we want to also encourage a Chicago landmark designation of the complex of buildings. These are remarkable buildings, noting the contributions of Edgar Miller and others, especially also noting that this complex, if you will, as it was remodeled, falls outside the period of significance for the Old Town Triangle District. I think when this area was landmarked in the 1970s, we didn't really think too much about that period of significance. We just assumed that all the buildings within the zone, within this district of buildings, were protected. And now we're seeing a lot of buildings from the mid-century under threat. But here's a building, a complex dating from the 1880s, and then attributed to Edgar Miller and others beginning in 1928. So it falls just outside that significance, and that's why it's so important to consider a landmark designation of this entire complex of buildings. Some of these interiors should be considered for designation too. They are truly works of art, and if you ever had a chance to experience this complex, you're just blown away by its beauty. There's also a book on this by Rich Cahan that came out a number of years ago. I understand it's going to be republished. And it also features many of these interiors. And with the Walter Netsch House interior being considered for landmark designation and then ultimately given landmark status, I want to encourage some significant features of some of these interiors, as well as the courtyard of buildings, and even the exterior wall and that beautiful doorway, that red doorway, all be considered for Chicago landmark designation protection. looking to the future. This is a remarkable work of art, this entire complex. And thanks to everybody who's been involved in protecting it, preserving it. And we can't forget about Lucy Montgomery. Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Aldinger. Lucy Montgomery, as the doctor mentioned, was tied to Harold Washington, Bobby Rush, and the Black Panthers history. There's an amazing sort of lasagna of history, as they say in Europe, when you go to places like Rome, of not only artistry, but cultural and civil rights history. And it's just such a beautiful story. I think that really needs to be told and told within a landmarks designation report. So we support the changes and modifications to the rooftop deck, but also want to encourage Chicago landmark designation of this building. And I'm hoping today we'll bring that about. Thank you, everybody, for listening to that idea, furthering that idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. We move to Zach Bleicher.
I just sit here. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm also an owner at this building, and I've sent several letters, which you may have reviewed. And as you know, I'm opposed to the roof decks permit application. I just want to mention also, I am the executive director of Edgar Miller Legacy, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year as the only established organization preserving and archiving Edgar Miller's work. I'm not someone who likes to brag or anything like that, but I am an expert on Edgar Miller. I just finished editing and revising the entire Edgar Miller book, which is coming out for a 3rd edition this fall. So I only say that because while I do appreciate Dr. Aldinger's history with Edgar Miller, the building, not everything that he said just now is factually accurate. That's not something we need to discuss in this venue, but just for the record, since this is a public meeting. So as an owner, I just wanted to say that the building currently before you today is exceptionally significant to the history of Chicago, as has been said before. And although it's not been landmarked yet, its importance has nonetheless been the subject of many media articles, television, radio segments, published books, and there's also an upcoming exhibition on Edgar Miller at the DePauler Museum opening in September. And sadly, this building has not been landmarked because the majority owner continues to block landmarking. Now that the illegal roof decks have been threatened with removal, Dr. Aldinger is publicly acknowledging that the building should be landmarked. However, as far as I know, he has not given any formal consent to landmarking, and from what I understand, is still officially opposed to landmarking unless the roof decks are permitted. So this impetus to landmark the building and to have written confirmation from the majority owner that he consents to landmarking should be the highest priority of the Landmarks Commission with regards to this case. As I've mentioned before in my letters to the committee, it is not only the historic guidelines that should be considered. For one, there is the fact that the roof decks were not built to code and are potentially life-threatening without a second means of egress. Secondly, all city agencies and the aldermen are aware that the most significant problem with this application is that it was submitted with zero legal authority because the applicant has never received permission from the building's condo association to build or alter any roof decks of any kind. Therefore, if this committee were to permit the roof decks, unfortunately, you would be indirectly enabling the applicant in his continued efforts to undermine the rule of law in breach of the building's own declaration and Illinois law. Now, I fully understand that that is not the purview of the Landmarks Commission or any city agency to adjudicate the applicant's breaches of condo law, but on the other hand, I believe the city has an obligation to do its due diligence when presented with credible information that the applicant has submitted this application unlawfully. Should the city not want to spend resources investigating those claims, Its agencies and committees should refrain from taking any action which could interfere with pending litigation in the Circuit Court of Cook County, in which these illegal roof decks are set to be evaluated and ultimately removed by the order of the Circuit Court. So I respectfully ask that the Permit Review Committee put an immediate and indefinite pause on this application, because the applicant cannot show clearly to the city that he has legal authority to apply for the permits he is seeking. The surest way for the city to not become further entangled in this issue is to pause their review of this application until the litigation in the Circuit Court of Cook County can be concluded and and fully adjudicated. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. We have one more person that's out to speak, Mr. Edward Peck. Edward Peck.
I'm the architect, so I filled out that document not knowing that I probably didn't. I had a presentation, but I think based on Emily's recommendation, I don't really need to go through that presentation, but I can answer any questions that I have. We've done, I think, you know, you remember the last time we met, Emily and I met on site and kind of did the mock-up review. She schooled me on the exercise of the sight lines and saying that the sight line diagram doesn't tell you the truth all the time. So we together kind of moved the mock-ups around, made decisions on the spot, and I think we came to a pretty significant reduction of the decks to limit from that public viewpoint. And most of those places that did have those views are from 120 to 160 feet sort of in distance, I believe, is what I measured off. And then I also had a photograph, we don't need to show it, as Emily pointed out. The railings were going to be black, not yellow, not red, you know, so the photographs that I had with the mock-up, you know, bright red, when I did the Photoshop of changing those to black, they basically disappeared with the parapet and the trees and everything, which I would think most people would agree. So we've done as much as we can to kind of retract those decks back to a much reduced size. And that's, you know, what we'll do to try to prevent the visual input.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment and for your history too. And that is the last person that signed to speak for this item, so we will close the public comment portion of this. I'd like to call on discussion from our commission. Any comments, points of discussion, commissioners?
Just maybe a point of clarification about maybe some of the public comments. I mean, in terms of the permitting and all those other things, I mean, just to clarify, obviously not a function for this commission to adjudicate, but you know, something that falls within the Department of Buildings in terms of permitting. Maybe that's a question or clarification.
We did have a communication with law to advise us, and you know, you were correct, you know, their sense is that this is just a pre-permit review. It is not, it's just to examine the plans. It doesn't grant the permit. And we did receive a letter from the condo association, and as in a similar process, DOB would have to consider that as part of their review of the actual permit.
Thank you, Commissioner Fair. Great question. Any other questions? Commissioners?
Emily, can you show us what was submitted versus what staff is recommending for that footprint?
Yeah.
Blue is what was submitted.
Yeah, so the red outside is what was there for 40 years. Yes.
Okay,
And the blue was what we reviewed in our mock-up.
okay.
And that particular corner, as you can kind of see in the blown up highlighted images, is really the most visible aspect from anywhere along the street. And so the staff recommendation is to, you know, eliminate approximately 3 by 5 rectangle, which we think will significantly reduce, if not entirely eliminate visibility from a lot of this vantage points.
I may speak, to eliminate that second jog, we probably would take that all the way to that one turn. So probably would eliminate another foot or two. You know, just, we don't need the railing to do a whole series of S curves and us.
So you guys are speaking to the applicant now, you guys are okay with the proposed staff
Yes, we accept
modifications?
those, yes, we accept the addition.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Any other questions, commissioners? Seeing none, I'd like to request a motion to adopt staff recommendation. Do we have a motion? So move, Commissioner Fair, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Hughes, and
One other
Yep.
comment, Emily, with the proposed change that he's saying doesn't have to come before us again, right?
This would be, that's what you're reviewing now. You shouldn't, the only reason you would have to review these particular decks again is if there were to be a substantial redesign that
Okay.
changed visibility, which is not, I don't imagine that's gonna happen.
Great.
But permitting is buildings commission. it's not-
Permitting is buildings, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Hughes?
Yes, I
Is it
second.
yes? Commissioner Ponce?
Yes.
Is it yes? Commissioner Rubin?
Yes.
Is it yes? And I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I think it's an improvement what's there. Appreciate the work, Derek. Let's move to project number 4. 2446 North Orchard, 43rd Ward, Arlington Zoning District. Proposed new rooftop, light well, and rear additions on existing 2-story masonry single-family residence. And Emily Barton has the presentation.
No.
Oh,
The next two are a little similar.
Sorry.
Hey, so the subject property here is located mid-block on Orchard Street between Arlington Place and Deming Place. The building is a 2-story single-family residence. And to create more usable space, the applicants are proposing 3 additions to the property: a 1-story rear addition, partial infill of an existing light well on the north elevation, and a 1-story rooftop addition. So the rooftop addition is approximately 35 feet in length, and proposed to be predominantly set back from the outside face of the parapet, 23 feet 8 inches. The stair leading up to the new 3rd floor is based off of the location of the existing stair in the house. Because of this, the stair will have a less of a front setback than the remainder of the addition. Consistent with commission policy, stair access towers are allowed to be visible so long as they're no wider or taller than required for code. To reduce visibility of this element, the stair tower is proposed to be angled to match the slope of the stair. The addition is proposed to be 11 feet in height. However, the existing roof level is proposed to be lowered in order to minimize visibility. Because of this and the tall front parapet, the addition will only extend 5 feet 8 inches above the parapet. To modify the floor heights, the applicant is proposing to carefully remove the existing side parapet walls down to the new 3rd floor bearing, salvaging all common brick masonry for reuse in the rebuild. The rebuilt parapet will be no taller than the historic front facade and less than 6 inches taller than the existing side parapet. The new addition will largely be clad in reclaimed common brick, with the slope of the stair enclosure and front face of the addition to be clad in a slate tile, which is a material found throughout the district. Visibility studies were conducted to evaluate the visibility of the new rooftop addition. I'm going to go through those. Okay, so this is right in front of the house, looking down a fairly wider side yard. And from here, you can see the the rooftop addition will be minimally visible through the side yard. However, from the next two vantage points, further north up Orchard, none of the additions are visible. From across the street, directly in front of the property, the stair enclosure is very, very minimally visible, but nothing else is. From vantage points 5 and 6, which is when you start to go down the T Street of Arlington, no additions are visible from either of these points. It's not until you get further down on Arlington that the rooftop addition starts to become minimally visible. Overall, the additions are largely not visible from vantage points within the district, and similarly visible rooftop additions in the district have been approved by the commission in the past, such as at 2456 North Geneva Terrace and 2467 North Geneva Terrace. Due to the street configuration of the area, the rooftop addition will be most visible from down Arlington Place, but except for the north side yard, will not be visible at all from Orchard Street. This minimal visibility will not have an adverse effect to the building or district, and staff recommend approval as proposed. In addition to the rooftop addition, the applicant proposes to remove the existing non-historic rear frame addition and add a one-story rear addition at the basement and first floor levels. This addition extends 4.5 feet beyond the existing rear elevation, and is proposed to be inset 2 feet 10 inches from the north and approximately 8 feet from the south. As the addition is no wider or taller than the existing building and a substantially smaller footprint than the existing rear addition, staff recommend approval as proposed. And finally, the applicant is also proposing a partial infill of an extant light well on the north elevation. The light well is approximately 4 feet deep, and the new addition will extend out around 2 feet, maintaining an inset of 2.5 feet from the predominant north elevation. This addition will extend up to all 3 levels and is proposed to be clad in a dark, non-reflective metal panel. Staff recommend that samples for all new materials be submitted with the permit application. This addition will be very minimally visible, but as it does not extend beyond the footprint of the front elevation, staff recommends this will not have an adverse effect on the building or district and recommend approval. Both Alderman Knutson and the Park West Group have been made aware of the project. No formal written comments have been received, but they were not in opposition.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily? Commissioners, let's hear from the project architect, I believe, who's here. Jason Osborne.
Yeah, hi, Jason Osborne with Elements Architects. I just want to thank the commission for hearing us and for Emily for all of your work back and forth with the design. So initially, our clients came to us, they had this building here that they were just purchasing and they wanted to expand it for their home. And we immediately loved the idea that they wanted to preserve this home and not like take it down like so many others that are in the neighborhood, but really restore its rich charm. There's also interior components that are built-in cabinetry items that they're going to also salvage and replace within the interior of the home. But the selling point is this wonderful graystone limestone facade that will remain completely untouched, aside from replacement of new thermally insulated windows. So we're using nice Marvin windows that will have a nice historic character. And the initial design was for this third floor was to kind of, we looked around the neighborhood and there's a lot of like forward facing gabled roofs. Some of them have like built out third floor, some it is the roof. But it gave a really interesting character to the neighborhood. So that was our starting point of design. Using that same kind of angled and sloped, we had set it back, I think initially like 7 or 8 feet. And then working with Emily back and forth, we made a process of 2 or 3 different significant changes, just further pushing it back. And while it's minimally visible, we still love the idea that we're using these design components and elements that tie it back to the history of the neighborhood. Immediately across the street, there's a row of a connected row of houses that all have like alternating front-facing facades. North of us, there's 2 or 3 other buildings that have that same slope, same material. So we're really using the same, that similar language. And then similarly on the north addition here, there's a deeper light well. So we're panning that out and maintaining like the zoning setback. So we're gaining about 12 inches of additional interior space with that. And then in the rear, this is now going to be a single family that's living here. So we're replacing the frame addition that was really just, they had extended some living space into it, but it's primarily a rear wood frame infilled rear stair, right, rear porch. So we've taken that off and kept the brick footprint of the original home, but adding a little glass box, addition for their kitchen and dining room. So, but we appreciate all the help and feedback back and forth. I think it's really helped to strengthen the design of our project. Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you so much. Commissioners, questions? Appreciate that. There are no public comments for this at this time. Any final points of discussion, commissioners? And I'd like to request a motion to adopt the staff recommendation. So moved, Commissioner Ponce, second Commissioner Fair, Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
Commissioner Rubin, yes, Commissioner Hughes, it's a yes, and I'm yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really nice,
Appreciate it.
really nice presentation.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to project number 5. 2026 North Orleans, Mid-North District proposed new rooftop and rear additions on existing 3-story masonry multifamily residence, and Joyce Ramos has the.
Thank you,
presentation.
Chair, and O Street, for the district. The subject property is located mid-block on Orleans Street between Armitage and Dickens Avenues. The building is currently a 3-story, 6-unit residence, and the applicants are proposing to construct a 4-story rear addition and rooftop addition to provide 7 new units in the rooftop deck. To construct the rear addition, the applicant is proposing to demolish a portion of the building at the rear. The proposed amount of demolition has been limited to 36% with the removal of 2 2-story brick sections at the rear. And the proposed amount of demolition is less than 40% and does not trigger the provision in the landmarks ordinance that requires commission and city council review. These sections are completely located in the rear, constructed out of common brick, and do not exhibit any decorative or ornamental detailing and are not visible from the public way. The new 4-story rear addition will be constructed directly behind the main building and is slightly set in at the side elevations of the historic building. The addition is no wider than the main house, will be clad in brick to match the existing brick on the side elevation. In order to evaluate visibility from the public right away, the applicant constructed a mock-up that represents the size and location of the addition. Staff met with the applicant on site and found that the rooftop addition was, as originally proposed, would be visible over the historic roof line of the front facade when looking directly at the front facade and visible when looking at the building just north and south along Orleans. The applicant revised the design by increasing the setback as shown in the drawings on this slide, and staff reviewed a revised mock-up representing this change and determined that the addition would no longer be visible above the roof line of the front facade and minimally visible on the side elevations. The addition is 42 foot 5 inches wide and is set back 26 foot 4 inches from the outside base of the front projecting bay. It projects 8 foot 4 inches above the top of the front parapet. The front wall of the rooftop addition will be on a slight angle representing a mansard style roof that will be clad in composite slate. The area in front of the rooftop addition will be accessed from the 4th floor units and will be used as a roof deck. Since the existing parapet is too low to provide adequate fall protection, the new 42-inch high wood guardrail is proposed to be installed behind the parapet. The guardrail will project approximately 6 inches above and set back 3 feet behind the parapet. It will not be visible from the street level. The existing parapets on the side elevation slope
down towards the rear, and the applicant is proposing to build up these parapets so it is level and matches the existing height of the front facade. The new brick and mortar required will match the historic, and staff recommends that samples for all new proposed materials shall be submitted with a permit application. The existing masonry garage at the rear is proposed to be removed and replaced with a new one-story masonry garage and roof deck is shown on purple on the plans. And no portion of the garage will be visible from the public right away. The following slides are from the on-site mock-up review that we evaluated visibility from several vantage points along Orleans as represented on the revised plans dated 8/1/2000. At vantage point 1, across the street and directly in front of the house, across the street and directly in front of the house, the rooftop addition will not be visible. At vantage point 2, just south of the building and across the street, looking through the gangway, a portion of the front and side elevations of the addition will be visible. And at vantage point 3, further south of the building and across the street, the addition is less visible. At vantage point 4, across the street, a few houses south of the subject property, the addition is no longer visible. At vantage point 5, just north of the building on the same side of the street and looking through the gangway, a portion of the front and side elevations of the addition will be visible. At vantage point 6, further north of the building and across the street, the addition becomes less visible. And then finally, at vantage point 7, even further north of the building and across the street, the addition is no longer visible. In conclusion, the rooftop addition is not visible directly in front of the building and does not negatively impact the roof line of the front facade. It is minimally visible from vantage points just north and south of the building and are only seen on the side elevations. This minimal visibility will not have an adverse effect to the building or district, and staff recommends approval as proposed. Other work proposed includes the replacement of the existing windows, and staff recommends that the new windows be 1/1 wood or clad wood windows, and large section detail should be included with the permit drawings. Currently, the parapet on the front facade is constructed out of brick that is different from the rest of the brick on the front facade. And in the 1950s, around that time, homeowners commonly removed the cornices because it was more economical to take them down rather than to fix or restore them, and were typically replaced with brick that attempted to match the historic brick below. The applicant is proposing to install a new cornice that partially wraps around to the side elevations, and since the original design cannot be substantiated by documentary evidence, the architect is proposing a simple profile that is still appropriate for the building and district, and that maintains the existing parapet height. Staff recommends that an enlarged section drawing that shows the dimensions, materials, and method of attachment be included in the permit drawings. The overall project as proposed will require a zoning variation and or adjustment. The commission takes no position regarding any requested variance or adjustment relative to the zoning code requirements. The Alderman's office and community group have been made aware of the proposal, but we haven't had any formal feedback from either. The architect is also here today, the attorney as well, so please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Can we hear from the project architect?
Hi, my name is John. I'm with PMPC Architects. I want to thank you guys for hearing us today. And thank you, Joyce, for all the hard work that you put out to this, going back and forth, trying to modify the design, make sure that it fits and it works with, trying to meet the requirements for this. The owner was not able to be here, he's out of town. But we're basically turning a kind of an old building in the interior, and trying to kind of rehab that and make it look very nice. We're actually also going from a 6-unit building to a 5-unit building in the interior, so we're minimizing the number of units. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions?
So the addition on the back is the extension of those units?
Yeah, it's gonna be an extension, correct, right?
Any other questions, commissioners? Seeing none, there's no public comments for this project. Any final points of discussion, commissioners? No final points of discussion. Just want to say, I'm really glad to see that you're putting the cornice back up.
Nice, yeah, that's something that we really wanted to put up there, especially because that brick does not match at all, and it doesn't look right.
I was gonna see people doing that, so really appreciate that. And then I'd like to request a motion to adopt staff recommendation. We have a motion. So moved. So moved, Commissioner Bruin, second.
Second.
Commissioner Hughes. Roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Frizzy, yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Francis, yes. I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you. Good luck. Last project. Project number 1601 North Milwaukee, 32nd Ward, Milwaukee Avenue District. The proposed new rooftop and rear additions on the existing three-story masonry multifamily residence at Joyce. Ramos has it.
This one is, for science. Did I make a presentation
Oh,
for
I did that.
Orleans? I'm sorry.
I think this is incorrect, then. This is the proposed installation of one new 8'6" by 30" tall illuminated, oh yeah, switch through letter cabinet sign above the main entrance at the curved south corner, one new 22 foot by 5 foot wide by 18-inch tall illuminated channel letter sign on the stone band. Joyce, so you can elaborate on all this stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The former Noel State Bank building, built in 1919, located at the sixth corner intersection of Milwaukee, Damon, and North Avenues, was most recently used for a drugstore retail until it closed in early 2023. The new tenant is proposing to open a new bookstore in this location. As a side note, Historic Preservation Division staff approved a separate permit for interior and exterior renovation work in June 2024. Okay, that's it. The applicant is proposing the installation of several signs on the exterior of the building. 8 new banner signs shown at right in the locations highlighted in yellow on the plan were already approved at the staff level and will be replacing the existing banners that were approved for the previous tenant by the PRC in 2011 and will be installed on the existing armatures and will not require any new attachments to the facade. The following signs are being reviewed today since one of the signs in the package requires city council order approval due to the mounting height above grade and one sign obscuring a significant feature of the building. A new 8'6" wide by 30-inch tall push-through letter cabinet sign is proposed to be installed above the main entrance located at the south corner of the building. The sign will be curved to match the radius of that corner, and the area contains a large ornamental stone unit with a round window. The proposed location would obscure a significant feature. Historic preservation staff recommends that the sign be reduced in size and really relocated to the flat stone units below the ornamental stone detailing. The thickness of the cabinet sign should also be reduced from the proposed 3 inches to as minimum as possible to minimize its projection from the facade. The face of the cabinet sign should be painted to match the color of the stone behind. I don't know why I got it. I'm sorry. It's fine. A new 22 foot by 5-inch wide by 18-inch tall illuminated channel letter sign is proposed to be installed on the stone band below the cornice on the southwest elevation. The top of the sign would be mounted 33 foot 6 inches above grade, and all signs in excess of 24 feet above grade requires a city council order, which triggers review by the permit review committee, city council order has already been issued for this sign. The stone in this location is flat and contains no ornamental or decorative features. A script letter sign in this location for the previous tenant was reviewed and approved by the permit review committee in 2011 and was one continuous sign that limited the amount of attachment locations and electrical connections. So in order to minimize the number of penetrations required for this sign, staff recommends that the individual letters be attached to a raceway that is also painted the same color as the stone behind. And lastly, a new 5'6" wide by 27-inch tall illuminated channel letter sign is proposed to be installed above the door on a northwest elevation. The stone in this location is flat and contains no ornamental or decorative features. Similarly, a script letter sign in this location, the previous tenant was reviewed and approved by PRC 2011 and was one continuous sign that limited the amount of attachments. So similar to that last sign, staff recommends that the individual letters be attached to a raceway that is also painted the same color as the stone behind. So for all new signs, staff recommends including details of attachment with the permit drawings. And the number of attachment locations should be minimized and located in masonry joints if possible. All electrical conduit and transformer boxes for each sign shall be sealed and their locations shown on the detailed drawings that are submitted with the permit application. Further, any holes in the masonry left on the removal of the previous signs shall be patched with materials matching the surrounding surface in color, texture, and general appearance. Any staining or ghosting shall be gently cleaned. The Alderman's office has reviewed the signs and expressed support of the staff recommendation. And that concludes my presentation. The expediter for the sign contractor is also here, so please let us know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Joyce. Any questions before we hear from signage? Seeing none, let's,
Hi, my name is,
introduce yourself. Yeah.
William Wade. I'm the permit expediter working with the applicant and the sign contractor. Yeah, so that she kind of summarized everything. Basically, they're just replacing some existing or previously existing Walgreens signs. So kind of just swapping those out with the Barnes and Noble. The applicant has no objections to the recommendation changes. They will get those added to the revised drawings, and we'll send those back to the landmark.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions before we go to public comments? Seeing none, let's move to the public comment portion with one person who signed up to speak.
Guess
Mr. Miller.
who? Guess who? Yes. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. So for the record, Gordon Miller, Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. I live not too far from this building, and it's a remarkable structure, and we all very much love it. It was it was Walgreens Vitamin Vault in the basement. It's just it's a beautiful little building, a beautiful space, right? Two things, and I'm not opposed to this. We're not opposed to this at Preservation Chicago. We're actually in favor of the project. Welcome Barnes and Noble to the site. However, I'm just wondering, are we oversigned, if you will, on this building? There are 8 banners on this little building, this little triangular 1.5-story building that have, that were approved. I remember a long time ago questioning that, what, do we need 8 signs, 8 banners on this little building? And then, of course, the 2 or 3 signs that are electronic. And I get it, but I would ask that maybe Barnes and Noble, and I don't want this commission to get involved, but maybe Barnes and Noble could take 1 or 2 of these banners off. I mean, you basically can't see this entire building because there's so many banners in perspective when you see this structure. And, so oftentimes we're talking about how signs obscure buildings, and I think we've got a little bit of that going on. It's not too serious, but I just want to say, every time I pass this building and I saw the Walgreens banners, I thought to myself, it's really too bad you can't see the beautiful architecture of the structure. And I know it's part of the Milwaukee Avenue district and it's protected on the exterior, but if you could, and this is also not something that this commission is looking at today, but this is a remarkable interior. It's a triangular banking room with a art glass skylight. I believe it's hexagonal and just gorgeous plasterwork. Corinthian order pilasters, gilded, coffered ceilings, you name it. And it's not protected on its interior. And I think that this should really be considered for an individual landmark designation of the structure. Realize the importance of this building at the 6-corner intersection. It's really a fabulous, fabulous building. So beautifully crafted. I don't know how many banking rooms of this quality that you'd find in neighborhoods around the city, and also this sort of triangular form. I felt every time I walked into this building that I was walking into almost an extension of the Marshall Field store on State Street. That's how gorgeous it is. I know it's got escalators added to it, no problems with that. These buildings have to function, but I just want to offer 2 things. One, would you consider, or would ownership at some point consider the Chicago landmark designation of the building, both on its exterior and its interior banking room? And number 2, if you could remove 1 or 2 of these banners on each elevation, I got to tell you, at a minimum, that would really be helpful to many of us in the community that look at this building, love this building, but always are stymied by, why do you need to be forced to look at the tenant a million times? And a place like Barnes and Noble should be able to take some of those banners off. I just want to offer that. We are in favor of the project, for the record. Just want to offer some suggestions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Great folks. I believe that's the last public comment we have, so we're gonna close the public comment portion of this. Any final points of discussion, commissioners?
Yes, I have a
Commissioner.
question. It looks like the original Walgreens W was covering that detail. Who approved that?
Like I mentioned, these signs were previously reviewed by the permit review committee in 2011. There was a condition that had asked to relocate that sign and to work further with staff on the design of it. And there was a sign permit application that was approved for that location. But unfortunately, there aren't any records of what that actual sign looked like or the location of the signs. I don't know.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, Commissioner Hughes? No?
Yes, I mean, it seems, the one question I have about that comment, you guys said to reduce the size and move it to where the detail doesn't exist. It's very minimum sizing around that for the sign to go. So would we just propose to eliminate that sign altogether?
Commissioner, I believe I highlighted in yellow and it seems like a reasonable size. In the image below.
Yeah, I highlighted like underneath the circle.
Okay. Sounds good. It looks smaller on my screen, sorry. On my Google Maps screen.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's good.
Okay, any other comments?
Just comments on, thank you, Mr. Miller, for bringing up those comments on the banner, and it would make a difference. It's such a classic building, and you see historical buildings with, modern stores, right, and their signage, and you appreciate those too, right, with the letting the architecture speak for itself. But I would also like to, add for you to consider the number of banners. You say one or two, let's just keep it even and eliminate two, consider eliminating two. We're talking about the signs and matching the color to the brick, but then there you have the color of the banners, right? So that would add to, and I just thank you for bringing that up, and it's a great point.
Commissioner, I just want to highlight that the attachments and the brackets for those banners were approved by the committee in 2011. And they exist and they're not being touched. The only thing that's changing is the canvas of the banner. So I don't think that it was permitted and legally installed, so we can certainly ask the Barnes and Noble whether they would be considering it, but I don't think we have the ability to require it.
How about we remove 4 of these?
You're welcome to call them as well, Warden.
I think I'll stand out there as they're putting them up and say, how about we get rid of a few of those so we can see the building? Especially in perspective, you really can't even imagine how big these are and how offensive they are with the advertising until you're there. And then that's all you see.
Commissioner Rubin.
There might be a subtext here that I wanted to address officially. So recognizing there's an ongoing conversation about what do we do about legacy businesses in Chicago to support them? Is it something that falls under historic preservation rules? Is it something that falls under somewhere else? I was looking at the map and recognizing that Myopic Books, which has been in business for 30 years, is a 3-minute walk or 0.1 miles from this new Barnes and Noble. Yes, we've all been inundated with a lot of Barnes and Noble in our lives and are sensitive to too much of their signage and presence in our neighborhoods. But maybe this is also a moment to bring out the importance of what do we do to make sure that we are protecting small businesses that are, planted roots in the neighborhood, give a neighborhood character we want to see thrive, even as the neighborhood changes around it with competition or other things. So this would just be kind of one more place to look and say, here's a good example of that. As we have a larger conversation in the preservation community, both in the city and in nonprofits and so on, this is a good case study. So put that where you want to.
I was gonna say, is that building landmark?
I
The
don't
legal
believe
store
the
Part of the
building-
district.
It's part of the district,
Okay.
but nothing protecting the business that's there, just the building itself.
And they have a little sign.
Whereas we're looking at. Whereas we're looking at accommodating, But if we're looking at marking of wax tracks, we're looking at marking that both for architecture as well as for the culture. And this would be another example of if we were to treat myopic in the same way, we would have to look at that criteria, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Blumer. Back to the.
Yeah, so I would say definitely in support of the staff recommendation on the sign that's at the corner. I think it's an opportunity to, you know, make better of what was the previous sign. And then it's not within our purview, as it was stated, but if there was room, our recommendation to make that ask, I would say remove every other. Effectively increase the spacing, double the spacing between the two. I think that's very fair. I've been there plenty of times and, between that, what they do with the window display, it'd be a little redundant, but, I think from standpoint of what's within our criteria, I think that's a fair ask, even though we approved it, whoever this people were.
Okay, so.
Before our time.
Is that a motion to adopt staff recommendation with just with the?
I have one quick question. I have one quick question about that detail what is in the circle?
It's a clock. It's a small vintage clock that hasn't worked in a long time. And for some reason, they let the W from a previous Walgreens sign stem from that. So you can sort of see the outline of the clock, but it's a small little clock.
Okay, the clock is still in place?
Yes, well, I could say the numbers of the face of the clock appears to be in place.
Okay.
It'd be great to repair that.
Yeah.
That could be another recommendation.
Stick it to Barnes and Noble, they have the resources. Sure, we have a list for them. But yes.
The design company fix the clock.
Commissioner Fair has made a motion to adopt staff. We have a second?
Seconded.
Second, Commissioner Rubin.
Yes, I'm a yes.
Commissioner Fulton, yes, I'm a yes, so thank you. And that leads us to, that's our final item, and we are, there's no further business, and I'd like to request a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
So, Commissioner Hughes, all those in favor? Anything else? I guess we're.